FPS Boost is well and truly here for Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S, with Microsoft rolling out support for another batch of backward compatibility titles, doubling their frame rates from 30 FPS to 60 FPS. Where the first 5 titles to be supported were a rather motley assortment, yesterday saw Microsoft focus on the games from newly acquired Bethesda, bumping up the frame rates in Fallout 4, Fallout 76, Dishonored, Definitive Edition, Skyrim and Prey. Except there's a catch. FPS Boost is here, but it's not always enabled by default. Similar to Microsoft disabling Auto HDR for games where it doesn't quite work right, they've made FPS Boost an opt-in setting for Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. The others, it's on by default. Not only that, but they note that you might have to play at lower resolutions to receive the performance benefits. So what's going on here? We don't know the exact technical reasoning for this, but our understanding was that FPS Boost should work on a system level to take the maximum possible resolution settings, whether that's up to 1080p for a basic Xbox One only game, or up to 2160p in the quality or resolution modes for an Xbox One X enhanced title. Take that game and then just double the frame rate. Could be 30 to 60, could be 60 to 120 in the case of New Super Lucky's Tale. In theory, this would then mean that Fallout 4 and Fallout 76, both of which were 1x enhanced with 2160p at 30 FPS and with no optional performance mode, should now run at 2160p at 60 FPS on Xbox Series X. However, for whatever reason, Microsoft has seemingly capped the games at 1080p, dropping down to the base Xbox One S resolution settings if you enable FPS Boost. This is, quite simply, a little bit baffling. The Xbox Series X should be more than powerful enough to double the game performance in Fallout 4 and Fallout 76. In fact, it is able to do this for other Xbox One X enhanced FPS Boost titles. That's a bit of a mouthful. Prey runs at 1440p with 60 FPS, and UFC 4 is at 1800p at 60 FPS, and so on. It's even more puzzling when you consider that mods have been able to circumvent their 30 FPS frame rate cap for Fallout 4 since day one on Xbox Series X and S. So we've had 60 FPS gaming since last November, and even a slightly hacky way to be able to play with this enabled while still earning achievements. It looks much crisper on a 4K TV, and it generally feels much more fluid during combat and some of the faster movement that you can get up to in the game. However, it is not locked at 60 FPS, with notable dips below that point when there's a large amount of alpha effects in play. That could be walking through dense foliage, or when a Molotov cocktail goes off, that kind of thing. You also, and this is true of both the modded and unmodded game, have a lot of shimmer to foliage when you're at 2160p, as the temporal anti-aliasing seemingly goes into overdrive here. Our best guess is that it's these rough edges to Fallout 4 and by extension to Fallout 76 that have forced Microsoft into this compromise with FPS Boost. Bethesda's RPG game engines are, let's just say, notoriously clunky, and these most recent games that are using it must be doing something that's not quite optimal or making the best use of the hardware. However, now that Microsoft owns Bethesda, there's always the possibility that they could go back and patch both of these games with bespoke Series X and Series S graphic settings. So how should you now be playing Fallout 4? What is the best version of this game? Well, that's really for you to decide, but it's a choice between Microsoft's FPS Boost at the sacrifice of some image clarity, or a 60 FPS Xbox Series X mod, if you will accept that it's going to dip from 60 frames per second at times. The one version that we don't recommend is the standard Xbox One X 2160p mode, which has got this strange variability to its frame rate on Series X, sneaking above and below the 30 FPS target at times. Now, this is all sure to be a little bit disappointing for a lot of people out there, adding some unwanted complexity to the backward compatibility situation on Xbox Series X and Series S, but there's still plenty of room for optimism for this feature going forward. The Fallout games so far are the exception to the rule, and heading into this, Microsoft has been quite clear that it's not a universal feature, and it's something that just won't work with all games. However, Fallout adds something new to this equation. The mid-gen updates to PlayStation 4 and Xbox One brought with them the choice and performance modes for a lot of games. And this batch of FPS Boost games, it shows immediately that there's actually quite a bit of granularity here for Microsoft to play with, leaning on that now familiar decision. FPS Boost is all about performance after all, so even if you can't get to those upper echelons of the resolution, it's still a very, very worthwhile option to add for a lot of games, particularly ones such as these where the performance isn't always that great. Thanks as ever for checking out our video. I hope you found it informative, and if you have enjoyed it, make sure to like, subscribe, share before you go, and hopefully we will see you again soon. Goodbye.